starting this process, starting to invest right now, wherever you are in your life, I guarantee you it can change your life and put you on a new trajectory that you definitely weren't on before. And this is something that I think should be motivational for a lot of people watching this right now. And so the first step here is let's motivate you. So let me ask you a question. How much money do you think you would have if you started investing $500 every month for the next 20 years? Here's what would happen. To start, you would have added $120,000 to your investments over this time period. So chipping away at $500 per month is $6,000 per year, and over a 20-year period, it ends up being significant money. $120,000 is what you invest. Here's where it gets interesting. So over that time, it starts off a bit slow. But over time, the more money you add in there and the more it grows and it starts compounding. And what happens is the money that you gain, if you make an 8% return over this time period, ends up being more than the money you put in. So now you don't just have $120,000, an additional $154,571. And so when you add this all up, what happens is your $500 a month ends up growing to $274,571. Now maybe this isn't motivation enough for you, whoever you are out there. So I have some tricks up my sleeve. How much money do you think you would have had if you started investing in the general stock market? Let's say the S&P 500 index, it's the largest 500 companies inside the US. But if you started investing in that stock market 20 years ago, how much do you think you would have right now if you had invested that $500 per month in the largest 500 companies? So what we can do is we can look back and we can see, using an ETF, which is a fund of the largest 500 companies, it's called SPY. That's a ticker symbol. And so looking back until the year 2004, your $500 per month, that's $6,000 per year, that $120,000 that you put into this over a 20-year period, it actually would have grown to $483,061. Now that's a little bit more than just over $270,000 I talked about before, because actually if you had invested back in 2004, you'd have grown a lot more than 8% per year. You actually would have grown it around 12.5% annually on average. So is this motivation for you? If not, well, I have one more trick up my sleeve. You see, not everyone works well with motivation. Some people unfortunately want fear. So here's my question. How much money do you think waiting will cost you? If you wait 1 year, how much is it going to cost you in your future retirement? How much money will you have lost if you don't start investing right now and you instead wait 1 year? If we use that same $6,000 per year, $500 per month, and we say that you make that 8% rate of return, well, we can figure it out. So 20 years down the road, what would happen is you'd have just over $25,000 less if you started investing next year instead of this year. And you never try to catch up. You just, instead of investing $500 a month right now, you wait till 1 year from now. So if you wait 2 years, you have almost $50,000 less 2 years from now. You have around $72,000 less. 3 years, you have around $72,000 less 20 years from now. If you wait 4 years, you have just over $92,000 less 20 years from now. And if you wait 5 years to invest, 20 years from now, you'll have around $111,000 less than if you start right now. Oh, you're not scared yet. Okay, well, hold up. How about this? Same numbers, but instead of 20 years down the road, what if it's 30 years down the road? How much does it cost you waiting a year? 20 years down the road, instead of having around $25,000 less, you're going to have almost $56,000 less. If you wait 2 years to invest, 30 years down the road, instead of almost $50,000 less, you're going to have just over $107,000 less money. Do you notice something here? It's getting worse, right? If you wait 3 years, well, 30 years down the road, you're going to have $155,000 less. If you wait 4 years down the road, you're going to have almost $200,000 less. And if you wait 5 years to start investing, 30 years from now, you would have just over $241,000 less money. So hopefully that motivated you or it scared you into getting serious here. Here's step 2. So how to accomplish these returns. So my advice is always going to be invest in the stock market. But how do you do it? What do you invest in, right? So I'm going to give you a few options, some ideas here, and I've actually made some materials that you can have for free that probably going to help you a lot. So like I mentioned, SPY is an ETF. So it's a fund and it invests in the largest 500 companies in the US. Well, you can also invest in an index fund, for example, instead of an ETF. They're very similar, but instead of SPY, you could invest in something called VT-SAX. That's a Vanguard index fund, and that invests, instead of just this top 500 largest companies, it invests in every company inside the stock market. So not just the largest 500. This is also done really well. So if you had started investing in VT-SAX back in the year 2000, if you had added $10,000, you didn't add any money after that, you'd have just over $66,000 as of around September of 2024. This ends up being about an 8.25% annual rate of return, like we talked about in the start of this. What if you could get an 8% rate of return? So here's an example of an index fund that has done that. Now, I created a cheat sheet for VT-SAX. You can download it, and it's got all this information: how much it costs, how much money it pays in dividends, based on different amounts of money, the top 5 holdings, hypothetical growth. It's got the minimum investment. And by the way, at the end of this video, I'll show you how to get access to all of these different resources. Going back to ETFs instead of index funds, Vanguard has over 80 ETFs. So it can be really hard to figure out which one you want to go with. So I created this resource for you. It lists every single Vanguard ETF. It ranks them by 5-year return, categorizes them between larger type companies that they invest in, that invest in the stock market, or those that invest in bonds. So for example, a Vanguard ETF that invests in some of the largest companies in the US also invests based on growth investing. You can see that the best return over the past 5 years for this category was MGK. That's the Vanguard Mega Cap Growth ETF. It costs 0.07%. It's very cheap. It pays a yield or a dividend of 0.4%. The average 5-year return has been 19.1%, and the 10-year return has been 16.1%. It's got a 4 out of 5 risk rating. Like I said, this is free. I think it can help you find ETFs if you want to start investing now. And this is a great resource to help you take a little snapshot of every single Vanguard ETF to help you figure out which one you might want to start investing in. We talked about index funds, talked about ETFs. What about stocks? Okay, we're going to come back to stocks later, but let's go next to step 3, which is don't leave money on the table. Okay, so step 3. Let's get comfortable for this one. This is a good one. To me, this is one of the most important steps that I think people should take, because I think a lot of people do make a mistake on this one. So this part is about your 401k, your 403b, or whatever your employer-sponsored plan is, if you have one. Those who do have one, who are lucky enough to be employed by an employer who gives a good match for a 401k, 403b, or whatever, we'll call it a retirement plan now going forward. There's basically free money, and if you don't get this free money, then you're walking away from free money, so you might as well get it. So I did a little research, and I found out that there are some very frequent retirement plan matches. For example, 6% of all retirement plans, they actually pay 100% on the first 5% of your salary that you put into the retirement plan. What does that mean? For round number purposes, let's just say you make $100,000 a year and you were to put 5% into your retirement plan. Your employer would match 100% of that 5%. So $5,000, your employer would then put another $5,000 in. So you got $5,000 for free. Now you can't beat that. So this step is getting your free money if you have access to it. Now I'm going to show you how important this is, because it's crazy. What I found in my research was the most popular retirement plan, according to Vanguard and their retirement plans that they administer, the most popular is to give 50% on the first 6% of income. And actually 16% of all Vanguard administered retirement plans have this scheme, let's call it. So using this information, let's take the median income in the United States. So $59,540 is the median income per person, not per household, per person. And so what that ends up being is, we'll just use $60,000 for example. So if you put in 6% of your $60,000 income, that's $3,600 per year. Now what's going to happen is your employer is going to match you 50%. So they're going to give you 50% of the $3,600 you put in. So what you're going to get is a free $1,800. Now, I want to show you what this actually gives you when you take advantage of it. So in year one, it's pretty obvious, of course, because you put in $3,600. You got your match, which is $1,800. So the right side is if you just invested in a 401k, or let's just say in a general account and didn't get a match. And the left side is if you got your match by investing in your 401k, if you got your free money. So in year 5, it gets even better if you get the match, of course. So by just investing and not getting a match in a 401k or any type of account, we're assuming you're going to make 8% here. You'll have just over $21,000 without the match. But when you get the match, now you have just over $31,000. How would you make up this difference at 5 years, right? You'd have to take so much more risk to try to turn your money into $31,000. It's definitely, of course, not worth it because you can just go put money into an employer-sponsored plan, your 401k, your retirement plan, whatever it is, and you can get that match. There's no reason not to do it. Now, how about 10 years? Just over $52,000 getting a match, but just over $78,000 now because you got the match. At year 15, you have just over $97,000. Good for you. You've been investing for 15 years. But what could have happened if you were getting your match is you'd have just over $146,000 per year. Oh, okay, much better. And then finally at year 20, it becomes ever so apparent because if you don't get the match, you have just over $164,000, but when you do get that match and you've been getting it for 20 years, you have just over $247,000 now. A pretty big difference when all you had to do was add money into your retirement account with your employer. Step 4 is actually simple because it's to keep it simple. Remember when I said I would talk about stocks later? Well, investing in individual stocks, I would say don't worry about doing that yet because investing in individual stocks when you're starting to do this, I think it can hold you back. You'll put so much time and effort into learning how to do it that you may never do it. So if you easily invest in an index fund, an ETF that tracks an index, then you'll be a lot better off at the start because you won't have to put all the time and effort into learning how to value stock. So keep it simple. Don't worry about having the most tax advantaged account. If you put some money into an IRA and you should have done it in a Roth IRA down the road, anything like that, I would say just start. If you're questioning it, throw it into just a taxable brokerage account, get started. Keep it simple. Later, you figure out the best way to do it. But for now, you start putting money away as quickly as you can and you don't look back. Keep it simple. And look, none of this is easy for most people. There's no shortcut, but you just gotta start. And I know that if you do, a year from now, 18 months from now, you'll be staring out the window and you'll be thinking to yourself about how proud you are that you started and how inevitably it changed the trajectory of your life. So go do it. I told you I would show you how to get that VT Stacks cheat sheet, so you can watch this video right here to get access to it.